Good evening, Berbice. Good evening, Ricky Ramsarup. Good evening, Vince, Dr. Vince. So good to be spending a Saturday evening with you. How are you both doing tonight?
Hey,
Thank you, Kat.
doing great, Kathy. I enjoying the the relatively warm weather. We getting into the springtime now, which is my favorite um, time of the year. So we're doing good. We're doing good here.
And Ricky,
Thank
how you doing, boy?
thank you, Kathy. I'm doing quite well. I had to come through your traffic on the east bank. I don't know how you do it every day,
Gosh,
but
it's
it's a
hard.
mess here. We had a past 2 days of rain, and we got some sunshine today, but it was nice.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yes,
good.
we had some good sunshine and nice change. And we want to say a very warm welcome to everybody in the Berbice area. We're talking about Region 5. We know people are picking us up on our Facebook channels in Region 6. Thank you for spending the next hour with us. And I think we're going to have an interesting conversation. You know, although we are having a fairly good time and we are blessed, and we're giving thanks for all the many things that we can give thanks for here in Guyana, and of course, you, Vince, in the US. But I wanted us to spare a moment for those folks in the Ukraine, a really, really bad situation. Vince, I know you're based in the US, and like us, you're seeing what's happening to this country. You want to give us a few words on this situation, and then, Ricky, I come straight to you on our thoughts on what's happening in Ukraine.
Yeah, it's as a matter of fact, I've been kind of glued to the television.
Mhm.
It's very disturbing. You like, for example, yesterday, I'm sure that you guys are seeing the same clips. We're a tank just deliberately ran over a car. Just
Yeah.
ran over it and backed out and continue going. Fortunately, the people in the car survived, but it's very distressing and disturbing as to what's going on in the Ukraine. And of course, there's always the politics in the United States, but I think overwhelmingly the people of the United States are really upset, including the politicians on both sides of the aisle. So hopefully, you know, hopefully there could be some resolution very shortly, because it's the suffering of the people.
Yep.
You see them
Or
crossing the borders. I mean, it's so, you see families being split apart. The men have to
mhm,
stay, and the rest of
mhm.
the families, the wives and the children have to leave to go in a camp who knows where. It's
Yeah,
it's 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 really bad. It's really bad.
it is. It is. Ricky, you've been
I
following it
thank
too?
Yes, Kathy. Thanks, and thanks, Vince. Good to be in with you guys. Look, I mean, this is a sad thing. We have really condemned this thing to the highest level. It's a bit frustrating because to look at this thing here, they could have really solved this thing in the human way, humanity, and I don't understand at this century we are going to war, where we have the entire world. We're working with the United Nations to ensure that we have democracy and to have peaceful way of resolution in terms of, if you have border issues. You saw the one with the Guyana and, and Venezuela. We're trying our best to put the diplomatic channel into play, the war court, the ICJ. There are so many ways that we can deal with an issue like this. But when I think this, Kathy, if you come back from previous person who have like this mental challenge, they believe that they're like God, and that's what power sometimes do to human being. They believe that they cannot be removed from the office. They believe that they have this power that they can control the world. We read a history about Hitler. Now comes Putin here. Um, and I don't know when it will stop, because the people of Ukraine, they are so much, as Vince was saying, the children and the women. I
Yep.
saw so many videos. They're crying. The children are holding their chest. They don't know what
Yep.
to do. They're picking up arms. What I like most is we had a world champion boxer. I mean, Vladimir Klitschko. We saw the Miss Universe. They pick up them arms because it's the right thing to do. It's your country. How
Mhm.
can you just wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to declare war on a country. And look, the buildings are destroying everything. We have seen war destroy buildings from buildings, country to country, Kathy. And the 21st century, I'm totally against that. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a sad situation. And like I said, I'm very, very, I think Guyana and everybody stands with the people of
Yeah.
Ukraine. I'm happy that all the political parties and, of course, the government have issued very strong statements. And, this is where I feel, in terms of our own country, we have to have a commitment as a people to be able to always speak with each other and to try to solve our problems. We have to make sure that there's no issue that can escalate in this country that could take us down such a road. So each and every one of us, the politicians, the members of civil society, each and every citizen must ensure that we have this responsibility to keep Guyana safe and to always be able to talk. And that's one of the sad things that I'm personally disappointed about, that the kinds of conversations we're supposed to be having, even within the parliament, we saw some very unfortunate situations in the
Hmm.
parliament, which we want to speak to the people of the Berbice area and to clarify some facts and to extend a hope and a wish that we're able to do this in a better way, that we can be bigger people, because we have to be able to talk with each other and understand that each and every one of us, every political party, has a right to participate in the future of Guyana.
Hmm.
So we had an exciting time these last 2 weeks. We've had some unfortunate things, and then we've had some good things happening too. The good things, we just finished our 52nd anniversary of a republic. We didn't really have MASH, understandably, but we were celebrating 52 years as a republic. And again, you would have known that on my Facebook page, guys, I put a post because I was horrified when I went to Parliament to lay a
Parliament.
motion that I'm going to tell you about. That we discovered that there was going to be a big flag raising ceremony, and of course, deliberately, members of Parliament, of the same Parliament where that ceremony was taking place, were not invited. And this is where we say we start to sow the seeds of discord when you will have a national event. It's not a political party event, it's a national event where all Guyanese, in this case, all members of parliament, at a minimum, should have been invited. And it's not that I want an invitation, I could sit down and rest at home, but it's the principle of it, that our parliament must be unified, it must always act independently, and the speaker must act independently. As you know, we actually put a motion because, Ricky, maybe you want to tell us a bit, very briefly, about what happened in Parliament that caused us recently to lay a motion. Update Vince and maybe our listeners about that infamous, now infamous dildo comment.
Thank you, Kathy. And it's kind of I'm embarrassed by those statements made in the highest office of our country. I mean, the highest. I always when I wanted to be a member of parliament, I was so excited. I wanted to be there. I want to be in that office. But when you go there and to see some of the languages that
Mhm.
parliamentarians, especially on the PPP side, talking, you want to know exactly. It's better to stay out of parliament. Look, Kathy, on that day, um, and you know, it was uncalled for. On that day, it was, you know, every time that member, Nigel Darmlal, every time he respond to a question, everything he respond to a question, he always putting some sort of negative comment within that question. If the speaker asked him not to get personal with what he was saying because he was attacking Natasha Singh Lewis, honorable member, first. I don't know if you recall that he started to attack her first, and the speaker, if you look at the video, Vince, you will see the speaker talked to him on 3 or 4 times. Can you please desist from attacking person on personal issues? Then I think one of our other MP, I think it was Miss McDonald, had a bag of mint, Vince, had a bag of mint.
Mhm.
I said, oh, you know what, you can have a mint. And he right away, I don't know what went to his head. I said, well, I think you know what to do. Just
Yeah.
like that,
Mhm.
with no reason. And I see now illegal over in America now trying to explain himself about the comments that he made, and he's lying. I am there. Shara Duncan was not in the Doom at that time.
Yeah.
I
In
remember.
fact, Sherrod had been in the lounge room for
That's right.
close to an hour and a half before, you know, and Ricky, I don't want to raise this because it's not one of our proudest moments, but I just want to raise it in the context of what you said. And that is Minister Dharamlal has now gone to North America. And I saw a clip where they were saying to him, just apologize. And of
Yeah.
course, he didn't even take that opportunity to reiterate an apology,
Mm,
to say, look, I meant no offense to women in general, women parliamentarians, or to this specific lady, the member of parliament. But the fact that he would lie and say he was speaking to Sherrod Duncan
I was
when
not
Sherrod
there.
Duncan was not in the room. So we're raising just so people know the truth. And the truth is, the statement was made while he was answering very serious questions on expenditures in the budget. And we want folks to know that the members of parliament spend close to 3 weeks in parliament at budget time, from 10 in the morning, sometimes until as late as 9 in the night, asking how specific line items and monies for different projects and different things are going to be spent. And that is actually part of the scrutiny, ensuring that we know ahead of time what the money that is being allocated is going to be used for. And we can ask all the questions. And the way it works is that this is taxpayers, this is the people's money. And therefore, the minister has to answer all the questions and reassure he's not speaking to the MPs, the members of parliament, he's speaking to the nation. We're asking the questions anybody in the nation may want to know, and he has a responsibility to answer honestly. And that is what is so sad, that the statement was made. You can look at the video clips and you will see that the speaker really did not even intervene and say to the minister right then and there, Minister, you are out of order. There was no
Yeah.
censor to him. Um, as we all know, Shara Duncan walked into the chamber, into the dome, very, very angry, and more or less said, no, you cannot speak to our female
Amy.
parliamentarians like that. And what is sad, which to me shows the fact that this speaker is not fair and balanced, you censor Sherrod Duncan for coming in and raising his voice, but you don't censor the person that on the floor, it wasn't a heckle, on the floor of the House said one of the vilest comments. Ricky, anything else you want to say on that? I don't want us to spend too much time because we got a lot of interesting things
Or
to
could
talk
I
about.
add my little
Sure,
piece,
sure,
Kathy?
Vince.
Here,
Sure,
and
Vince.
I looked at I tried to look live at most of the budget speeches. So I did see that live, and I
Yeah.
did see it on video all the time. And I always look at it this way. I think it's deeper than even the speaker. The behavior of members of an organization is a reflection of the leadership and the culture of that organization.
Mhm.
And for this guy to get, first of all, I'm not even going to mention his name or even call him a minister because he doesn't deserve it. To me, he should be out of parliament. He doesn't deserve to be a minister. He doesn't set the right example for the kids of the country. But it's just a reflection of what's tolerated and what's accepted within the what appears to be the PPP party. Because let's say here's this statement that was made off the cuff. The first thing that any decent leadership would have done is condemn it or
Mhm.
apologize, tell him he's got to apologize. Not only did they not do that, they're parading him all over the place. I would have been hiding him in some corner to keep quiet, at least to sell the site for a little while. They're parading him internationally, which means a party they're proud of this type of behavior. So it's much deeper, but it reflects again the behavior of the party and what their culture is.
Yep.
I
Well,
totally endorse that, Vince. I totally endorse that because, I mean, he said that he offered apology. It was not a. All he said is that I retract what I said. That is not an apology.
yep.
It
Yep.
means that it will remove from the writings of the Hansard in the house. That is the only thing that happened. But he still did not apologize to the female MPs or the entire nation for what he have done. He have not done that, Kathy.
And you're right. And one of the things I felt strongly about is that we can't have men treating women at that level in the parliament and then
Mhm.
turn around and talk about domestic violence and everything
Yep.
else. We have to be fair, and all and every woman in Guyana does not deserve to be spoken to in such a derogatory manner. So just
Exactly.
so everybody knows, on February 22nd, I laid a motion. I'm the mover, and of course,
Excellent.
Nima flew best, one of my colleagues, is the second of the motion. And the main thing about it is that I want to explain to people that the parliament has their own set of rules, and they're called standing orders. And Standing Order 41, and I'm quoting, expressly prohibits the use of offensive and insulting language about members of the assembly. And so, as we said, we have censored just as how Sherrod has had to go to he's down to go to the Committee of Privileges, which will examine this situation. We're saying that Mr. Dharamlal should be sent to the Committee of Privileges. So we've asked in this motion that that be done. We couldn't leave it just a lie like that, especially since we feel he hasn't apologized adequately.
Yeah, Kathy,
So
I totally agree with the actions you guys are taking, but I hope that this here is a message being sent to the women of Guyana, in terms of them understanding where the PPPC lies in terms of its respect for women, and I hope the party and this guy has to be held accountable.
yep,
And accountable. I guess the only way you can hold them accountable is when you cast your votes. So people, they ought to be paying
Yeah.
attention. The woman of Guyana has to be paying attention, to as to where their interest lies, and it's definitely does not lie in the PPPC as clearly demonstrated here. No apologies, no condemnation by the leadership. It's accepted, as a matter of fact. Because the guy is even being rewarded, as far as I'm concerned, by being all over the place.
paraded in the US.
I
That's
didn't
right.
Yes.
even
So
know.
so
I didn't even know that.
to me, they like what he did, as far as I'm
Yep.
concerned.
Yep.
I didn't even know that he got back his visa because I know he was revoked for some disciplinary, some sort of behavior like that before. I didn't even know that he got back his visa. I was
Yep.
surprised. You remember?
Yes. But anyway, we have said that there should be some kind of punishment.
Yeah.
So let us see if the motion is allowed to be debated, and that will make an interesting time. And I'll definitely come back to tell you what happens.
But Kathy,
But
again, I want to emphasize that we need to expand this punishment beyond him, because we're
I
looking at
agree.
him. It has to go. We've got to tie this party, because that's where his cues are coming from in terms of his behavior, and it's wanting to blame him, but to me it's a bigger problem we have.
Yep. And one of the things I know for sure, and I'm honest enough to say that the speaker, I feel, hasn't taken enough control of the parliament, and therefore there's always I've been in parliament since the parliament in 2011 and then in 2015, and this is the worst that I have seen in terms of how people speak to each other, in terms of how they treat each other, Half the time you can't even have an intelligent debate with the nasty and vile comments that are made. And some of them are on both sides. That is true. But this is where the speaker needs to take control. I actually have started to go quite a few times. I choose to attend Parliament virtually just because I have found it to be a very abusive environment. And as a woman, I was telling a friend yesterday, I'm very fortunate in my family. I have had men around me all my life that have wanted to build me up, that have built the women up, and then to go into parliament. There's one individual that from the time I walk in, he starts shouting, cat, 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 you know? And I think to myself, my family doesn't abuse me. Why would I go to a parliament to sit for next to 7 hours to be abused? So it's a major problem, and we hope that we will begin to see a change in that. But Ricky, both you and I are excited because it's an honor to have Vince Adams with us here today. And so, Vince, your expertise is, of course, the oil and gas area. I want to remind people that Dr. Vince Adams was the former head of the Environmental Protection Agency, and we've heard several agencies decry the way in which he was fired and sent off the job when he was really one of the most qualified people. Long years of experience working in the US at the highest levels. So, Vince, we just completed an oil and gas conference. And I know one of the things that persons in Guyana have been talking about, and it came on the sidelines, it came up on the sidelines of the conference, is this whole issue of us having enough insurance in the event of an oil spill. So, could you take us through and explain a bit about that issue and why Guyanese should be concerned about not having the requisite insurance and managing the oil environment?
Thanks, Kathy. Here, let me first of all talk about a little bit about the conference, which was a good thing, by the way, for Guyana. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's now showcasing Guyana in the eyes of the world. Not a whole lot of people have heard about Guyana before now, so this is it's a big deal to have these conferences. As a matter of fact, I had the privilege and opportunity to be chairperson of two major international conferences, two of the biggest international conferences for science and engineering in
Mm-hmm.
Kazakhstan and Germany. So I was responsible for planning. And the planning starts even a year ahead of time. And I just read in the newspapers here today, where of course, everybody else were excluded, apparently, except for the PPP folks. They didn't even invite, from what I understand, the opposition to be there, which was totally inappropriate in terms of in inclusivity, which is what you think that the country. You mentioned, which is again getting back to a cultural thing. The opposition wasn't even invited to the celebration for Maishomani. And here again,
Yep.
you're excluded from the probably the biggest conference that the country ever had. But the way it's
And
normally
Vince,
done.
Vince, can I
Mhm,
just cut you and remind you, because I'm not sure if you were in Guyana yet, but we
mhm.
actually hosted the first International Oil and Gas Conference, and we had
Okay.
over 600 participants in 2018. And believe it or not, we made a point of inviting the then opposition, the PPP,
Yep.
and some of them
Wow.
even
But that's the
spoke
way
at the
you do it.
conference. And
That
that's the way a
that's the
nation
way you
does
do it.
it.
And
That's
then
the
to,
way a nation
and
does
then
it.
today, I couldn't believe I had to take a second look in the newspapers in the headlines. I guess the guy was in charge of setting up the conference or something. He said, and it's in the Kaiser News, that the opposition does not have any qualified people to be part of those panels in the conference.
Oh
You know,
dear.
the first thing you do not select people. The way you select people for a conference, you send out expressions for papers, etc. You set up an
Mhm.
independent committee a year ahead of time. Everybody submit their papers. It doesn't matter which political leaning, and panels select, experts select those people to be on these panels. They're no political. It's nothing driven by politics. To hear this
Yep.
guy saying that, well, the opposition doesn't have any qualified. Who the heck is he to determine who's qualified? And I want to know which of them have more qualified people than the opposition.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as far as the oil and this whole thing about the insurance, because I noticed that there's a real justifiable upsurge in people asking the question, where is, why don't we have full coverage insurance? And of course, if we trust me, and we will have a spill. I don't know what size, but as we know, you never expect the spill that you had in Macondo. You had a
Yeah.
big disaster at Piper Alpha many years ago in the North Sea that killed 167 people.
Yeah.
Um,
When it exploded.
that's right. So you can have it of major disasters from an oil spill. The Macondo is a good example. The Exxon Valdez, of course, and we're still
Uh-huh.
living with the remnants of those of what they did to the environment and the people's lives. Now,
Mhm.
so we can wash away, and this is not something that I'm making up or guessing. It's in the environmental impact assessment where you run the analysis, you run the model to see, which areas are going to be affected and how. The oil she would go all the way, travel to wash away the entire Caribbean, basically, all the way to Jamaica. The whole
Wow.
economies of those countries that depend on tourism, etc., will be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that we've got to talk about, we're talking about what happens in Guyana. Now Suriname is producing right next door to us. As a matter of fact, it's right just a few 100 feet away from where we produce and they produce. And we're downstream of anything that happens there. We're down, especially the first area that will be hit is Belize. The entire
Mm.
coast of Belize will be hit. That's the first thing because of the flow. Now, let me tell you something about this insurance thing. Because I've been watching almost on a daily basis. People have been writing and expressing their concerns about the insurance. The one thing that I don't think that people know, that when I was at the EPA, we forced Exxon into agreeing to full coverage insurance.
Mhm.
First of all, they didn't, because the old contract had said that you could be self-insured. Well, guess EPGL, which is a small subsidiary, it's a newly formed corporation. They don't have any assets. So when Lisa 1, when I got in there, Lisa 2, when I looked at Lisa 2, I said, no, 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 no. You don't have any money. You've got to go get insurance. So they went out there. They got the highest in the market was $2.5 billion. I said, Macondo, the spill in the Gulf, is running $70 billion. So who's going to cover the rest? Guyana
Wow.
go bankrupt. So they said, well, we can't do this. I said, well, okay, you watch it. That permit on my desk, I ain't signing it until you get it. And they thought I was kidding. It sat there for months. They tell me how much money they were losing. I said, hey, that's not costing me anything. So you've got the incentive. Anyway, they finally agreed that they're going to go get full insurance. And what we demanded is that the parent companies have to cover anything over the 2.5 billion. And the parent companies are, of course, ExxonMobil,
Wonderful.
Hess, and Sunup. So they
Mm-hmm.
said, well, I said, hey, you got to figure out how you did. Well, they agreed finally. And they said, well, okay, give us time for us, the three parent companies, to get together and figure out how we're going to cover these liabilities. Well, they were working it for months with our attorneys. And up to the time that I was leaving, we were close to coming up with that agreement to be signed. We had several meetings. And then, imagine, I was removed in August. Not only was I removed, they removed the attorney who was handling it. A young one of the smartest young attorneys that stood up to Exxon, even took Exxon to court when they weren't going to pay their fine. Of course, they dropped that case also. But they got rid of us. So they got rid of me in August. And they signed the PIARA in September, because I told them if they do not give me that document with a signature, I am not signing off on the PIARA. And of course, you're not going to start production. And Lisa too, that they now have started. Well, I left in August. They signed everything off. They got rid of those meetings and dropped everything. So the point that everybody needs to know, that we already had full coverage insurance, and it was dropped by the incoming PPPC government, and they need to explain it to the people of Guyana. Matter of fact,
Wow.
I've got a letter to the editor covering all of this in detail that should be coming out
Mhm.
this week or this
So,
weekend.
so Vince, if God forbid, this is something we would never want. But if there was some kind of spill right now, are you saying that there would only be coverage up to $2 billion?
No, here's the other thing, Kathy.
Or we don't even have that
Here,
now?
here's the other part. Here's the other part of, and I don't know if these were deliberate decisions. You remember I said we forced Exxon to get 2.5 billion.
Right.
Well, of course, part of that which is in the permit says that they have to maintain it, and we are supposed to be checking to make sure they maintain that policy because they have to show us proof.
Oh,
Well, guess
yeah.
what happened? Now I'm seeing the vice president is coming out several times saying that they're going and trying the EPA to get 2 billion, which means my question is, did they allow Exxon to get rid and just drop that policy to now start talking about this $2 billion? So that's the other question. The first question is, why did you drop the full coverage that we already established? And then the second thing is, covered by the parent companies, the additional over and above. And the second thing, are you saying now, it sounds as if you're saying we do not even have that 2 billion, which means we have no insurance based on, if you read what the vice president is saying. Because now he's asking for this 2 billion. Well, we're supposed to have 2.5 billion forever regardless as the floor. Well, apparently we don't even have that right now.
Wow.
So,
so
those are the two questions that we need to push.
Need to ask.
But that they have to answer those two questions.
Ricky, we can ask it in the parliament. Go ahead, Ricky.
Yeah, no, I mean, Vince, you're absolutely correct. I mean, it's not only Guyana that will be affected. We have saw only on 15th of January, I don't know if you recall it, Peru. They had an oil spill over about 70 kilometers in along a distance, an oil spill from the Repsol, the Spanish company that is there. You understand me? And these things are reality. Then we had a gas leak the other day. I can't remember where that was, but these are all because, and I'm talking about the gas because the location that is that they are putting the gas to shore project. It's very, very, very in a strategic location. But Vince, you're absolutely right. You have to get insurance because those countries that you're talking about, like Barbados, Trinidad, Jamaica, will be highly affected, and those countries are based on indeed the tourism.
Yep.
So, and I'm happy, you brought this up because our and the important one you brought up here is the one in Suriname. That if there's an oil spill there, because we should demand Suriname having an insurance too.
That's right. What happened there? I was, as a matter of fact, I was in a committee that went to Suriname. We had 3 ministers who attended the meeting, their natural resources, etc. And that I asked them, first of all, there are a couple of issues there, and apparently there wasn't any follow-up. They're so close to where they're drilling to us. I asked them, I said, we need to see the information as to whether you're doing directional drilling, which means you can go vertical, but then come horizontal over into our. So I said we need to see all that information, and then of course, secondly, where are your models that you ran to see if you've got a spill, where is it going to go? Because we did all that and we should be involved. This is what was my recommendation to the State Department. Well, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We should be involved in their modeling and their preparation for an oil spill response and those type of things. But here's the other thing. Here we've got Venezuela next to us. Do we want to give Venezuela some kind of a reasoning? Because Venezuela sure would be washed away also, by the way. Because it comes from east and everything comes west. So that that whole all along the North American, the South American shoreline would be in jeopardy. So do we want to give Venezuela some kind of a reason to do whatever they want to do? So this here is real. And then the other thing is, to Kathy and Ricky, our spill response plan is grossly inadequate. And here's the other thing that I'm going to tell the nation right now, that I refuse to sign off on it. I would not. I mean, there's no way that I could have put my name on something like that.
Wow.
So that gives you you know.
So Vince, again, just for clarification, are you saying that if we did have a spill, we don't have a really high-powered, excellent plan in place with the personnel and who will come in
No,
to manage it and equipment and all of that?
here's some key pillars of a response. First of all, you've got to know what you're planning for.
Mm-hmm.
So what I asked for, I said here before we need to do a risk assessment to figure out what we're planning for, and on top of that, now remember, now you've got to have, and I've developed spill response plan, well, not emergency response plan, which is the same thing for various scenarios. So when you establish the scenarios, but the thing is everybody along the coast are going to be effective, which means that you've got to get them integrated into your plan. Because when
Mm-hmm.
stuff start happening, they've got to understand that, you've got to have force responders. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
identify who's those
Yeah.
responders, who they're taking instruction from. So you've got to have an entire chain of every single community along the coast, and everybody understand who is doing what. There's nothing. Communication is a key part to that. And you also have to have, like a central place to monitor at all times. You can't wait
Mm-hmm.
until something happens to say, "Oh shucks, you know what? We need to put." It's gonna cause sheer panic,
Yep.
and
Yep.
nobody's gonna know what to do, and we don't have the technical experts. So we all keeping our fingers crossed that it doesn't happen. But here's the other thing, Kathy, that a lot of people are not even recognizing. We're thinking, well, hell, they're way offshore, but guess what? The models show it comes onshore and even goes up rivers. So could you
Oh
imagine when it
gosh.
starts going up the river in Georgetown, for example, when it starts going up what the heck is going to happen? So it's a serious, serious matter that we're taking too lightly. And, especially in terms of the insurance that we dropped, that the government
Mm-hmm.
should have to explain it. And of course, what are the consequences? If this thing happened, besides the cleaning up, what are you doing to prevent it from happening?
Mm-hmm.
To begin with, or at least reducing the risk of it happening. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we even believe, somehow we just going along lackadaisically, but there's some serious consequences.
Absolutely. It's
Like when I was at
Vince.
EPA, for example, one of the things that was in my plan, besides setting up an entire petroleum unit that again they've dropped. I worked with the World Bank. The World Bank gave us contribute $1 million because they saw the need for it. We established an entire petroleum unit with 36 specialized people that we're going to go out and recruit. We established a unit with the organization who was going to be doing what, and now we're going to go out for recruiting when COVID hit. So we put it on the back burner for the time being until we got our budget, etc. All of that has been dropped. And
Wow.
one of a component of that you guys may remember me talking about is to have on-site presence 24/7,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can see what's going on. You can pick up very early if the operations are not. We had maintenance problems. That was one of the fines that we had to levy on Exxon. 6 times they had little leaks. They
Yeah.
never reported it, and we fined them, and it was just 500 US dollars or something. They refused to pay it.
That
But
that was
those
amazing.
small things in terms of processes, that's what lead to the bigger things. If you cannot,
Mm-hmm.
it's a matter of again culture, safety culture. You need to
Mm-hmm.
have people on board 24/7. No question about it. It's something that even in the big United States, we do not have any facility where we are operating, where there's any kind of high risk, where we do not have people trained and at
To
those
deal with it.
facilities 24/7.
Yeah.
Because
Yep. Yep.
it's no question that 99% of the time what the contractor tells you is happening out there, 99% of the time it's totally different.
I,
Wow.
Kathy, I just want to mention this as Vince talked about some minus oil spill. I recently, I think it's about a month or 2 months ago. I think it was there was a video circulating with some oil in the rib on the
Yeah.
Atlantic by some
Yeah.
fishermen. Now,
Mm-hmm.
that thing, do you know that story died out? You know why it died? We have learned that those guys that got the video, they were called into a room, and you know what happened after then? They came out and said, "No, no, that was not oil; it was something else," and that was the end of the matter. You understand?
Mm,
They had a video, I mean, and that's a good thing with technology and the Facebook and all these things. By the time it happens, you see it, it just
yeah.
spread, and that just died like that. It just
Yeah,
died.
but
Well,
I don't need to dominate, but just quickly, just a few seconds, and you know what they're dumping, and it's we're going to be end up dumping billions of barrels of water that
Hot
comes
water,
with oil, and
hot
that
water.
that water is contaminated with oil. In the ocean, the water is 3 times hotter than the ocean. You can't tell me that's not impacting the
yeah.
environment, the fish, and
Well,
everything else.
Fishing.
right. Well, we already have fishermen in region 5 and 6 that are complaining,
Hmm.
Yes.
and we have to be able to look at these issues. And at this point, I think it would be important for me to make a call to the government to reassure if this information that we are saying is not so and you have the requisite insurance to cover, then reassure us.
Yep.
Let's maybe in the next week we will hear from the government some discussion on this issue, and we will be able to see the policy and hear of it and be reassured that we have the plan and also the requisite insurance coverage.
Yep.
um, Vince, anything else you wanted to mention? Because I wanted to go on to another critical issue that's especially important to
Now you go
the
right ahead,
Region
Kathy. I
5.
think you've done.
So, right, right. And again, Vince, thanks so much for
Mhm.
sharing your information and your knowledge. Now, Ricky, we have a situation, as you know, we have received quite a few calls from persons that have been very disturbed about the packaging plant and the fact that we just heard, by the way, that they had actually leased the plant to a private company that's gone into a joint venture. And of course, we've heard stories that maybe the workers may not be kept on, but I think we were reassured that they would maintain their jobs. So, Ricky, tell us a bit about that situation and your thoughts on it.
Thanks, Kathy.
And this
Look,
is the Enmore packaging plant.
yeah. So let me go back a little bit
Mhm.
before I come to the packaging plant. Um, when the PP government took over, prior before they took over office, they telling the sugar workers, especially across this country, the length and breadth of this country, that they will reopen back the sugar estates that the AP
Mhm.
and UAFC closed.
Mhm.
Right? We have done a state paper with also the assistant from GAU that clearly states that the right sizing of the sugar industry was a
Yeah.
right approach.
Yeah.
So it shows also that Enmore, Rose Hall, including Skeldon, I wouldn't rule one out. They were not
Profitable.
profitable.
Yep.
So to make it profitable, we had to right size it, meaning we would have been putting, with the paper shows that the Blairmont Sugar Estate, they they wanted Albion and they wanted Iflux. Those are the three estates would have kept, so that those sugar plantation that is there would have supplied those three major factories.
Yeah.
That was very effective. Now the PVP say, put the narrative over to this sugar workers, and I'll call the numbers, the 17,000 sugar workers, plus the families and other persons that's involved, that the AP and UAFC is closing sugar estate and they will reopen it back. 2020, the Minister of Agriculture stated clearly, I don't know if you recall, Kathy,
Yep.
shouted to
Yep.
his breath in Parliament that the PVP government will reopen back sugar estate. But we have seen reports that when we ask the question, when they will open sugar estate, there's no definitive answer.
Yep.
Reports stating that the vice president himself stated that there's no definite timeline when the sugar estate will be reopened. Mind you, we have spent over $22.2 billion already,
Billion. Yep.
billions of dollars already
And
in
we
that
don't. And what are
industry.
we getting for it?
And let me come back now to tell you that where the PP government lied to you, sugar workers. You know why? I'm going to tell you. So Kathy brought up the topic that they have so well, it literally sold out, sell out the
Packaging
packaging
plant.
plant that we
Yeah.
spent 12.5 million US dollar to modernize. You remember
Hmm.
that, Kathy, 2017?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
12.5 million US dollar we spent on that
It was one of
factory.
Mr. Jagdio's projects that never worked, and then it
Go
started
and we spent that
and
money
didn't
to
meet the
get it going.
capacity.
That's right. And
Hmm.
the second one, um, the terminal, the sugar terminal at the wharf, they are going to
Yeah.
put their lease it to the rice industry. That is showing you a sign, a clear sign that there's no intention of reopening back the sugar estate. So why did they lie to the people?
Hmm.
So so the sugar workers need to understand that they are being fooled by the current administration that sugar is not profitable. And and let me tell you this, let me add this, Kathy. The CEO of Gaisuku, including Gao, did not know about that
Yeah, I saw.
packaging plant. They
Yeah, we saw
now,
that in the
after the
papers
deal made, they now Gao is now going to have a
to
meeting
meet. Yeah, to
on the
find
sugar
out.
thing.
Yep. Yep.
And this is totally embarrassing to the country. Why are you fooling
Yep.
the people?
Yep.
The
Well,
17,000
remember.
people.
Well, remember that the PPP actually had to close some of the sugar estates long before 2015.
LBI
And
and
the
Diamond.
reality is that we know that sugar has been on the decline. And I want the sugar workers to understand that we value each and every Guyanese
That's
citizen.
right.
We value the sugar workers, we value the teachers, we value the doctors, we value the policemen, everybody that's needed to keep this country going.
And the women.
But, and of course, the women. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Vince. But what we want to say is that if something is not working, and that's why if you look at the white paper, we had a program to start to lease and in some cases to actually give lands to some of the sugar workers, and quite a few of them got
Mhm.
it when they received their severance. You know,
Severance.
they like to suggest that no severance was paid. Remember, half the severance was paid in January of that year, and then by the December, we'd gotten enough money to pay. So the APNU AFC made sure that everybody that was severed um, was actually paid their termination benefits. And what we're saying now is that if sugar in the traditional sense is not working, we want a program like the one we had outlined and is in the white paper, a program that allows us to retrain our sugar workers, that gives them land, that allows them to get a skill that is going to be useful. We're saying if sugar not working like this, but there are different avenues. We talked about cane for ethanol. We talked about several other possibilities. What we're saying is that we should be looking at that. And it is sad that once again, the people of Guyana seem to be, especially the sugar workers, seem now to be tricked by the same people that said we're gonna open everything back up. It's very, very sad.
Yeah, and Kathy, you remember, in addition to your ethanol plant and so on, you remember we have expanded the DDL, we have supported that project with a juice
Yep.
factory. And citrus, I think it was over 200 million US dollars expansion
Hmm.
project. And you recall that you were setting up, I think you were a part of this when you had that the farmers market app, the app that you guys set up.
Yes,
You
yes. I haven't
remember
heard
that app?
anything else about that.
Yeah,
The
all those
other
things are
thing
done,
too,
you know.
yeah, and then the other thing too is that we had indications because I remember it being discussed in a cabinet meeting where Pepsi had
Mm.
actually wanted to do some work with some of the estates just to produce sugar for their soft drink factories throughout the world. And of course, we know that DDL had also at one stage expressed an interest
Hmm.
in the molasses for their
That's right.
rum industry. So these are things, other avenues that we were supposed to be exploring. And none of those discussions we have heard. And at the end of the day, what we're saying, we in the AFC feel very strongly that now we have more monies from our oil and gas industry. We want to remind the citizens that it's 607 million US dollars. 607 million US dollars that has been put into the budget. And what we're saying is that now, before we didn't have money, we were struggling to make ends meet. But now we have this money, we have to ensure that it is spent in a way to benefit Guyanese. And so the question we're asking is, how is the money that is now being put into Gaisuco still and into the sugar industry, how is that benefiting the sugar workers themselves?
Mhm.
Because if we put in billions into what I call a black hole and we ain't seeing anything, it's better you use the money to buy the land or lease it to them or something where people benefit directly. Similarly, we had this wonderful opportunity to ensure that we could have taken a couple million out of that 607 million and made sure young people, we could have subsidized university
That's
education.
right.
We
That's
could have
right.
subsidized all the GTIs, the government technical institutes. So people today are trained at the highest level in welding and all the different kinds of things that we may need for the oil and gas industry and the support services. And the minimum wage could have been increased to 100,000. The pensioners could have gotten much more, you know. The minimum wage could have been more. And what we're saying is that, yes, don't waste time talking about who did and who didn't do. The reality is we couldn't do more before as much because we didn't have the money. But now we have the money. What are we doing? But
Kathy, in addition to that, the same very Port Moran school that we proposed could have been expanded to train persons in Barbies for the oil and gas. Also,
and we
the
have the Tain campus too there,
right,
Ricky.
good. So about the community,
Yeah.
the expansion for the Teen University with the same free education that we had, and in our manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
Our manifesto had free education from nursery to tertiary
Yep.
because of the same thing of the pursuit, because the human capital or human resource are the most important thing for an economy. So that is where you have to invest your money. But no,
Mm-hmm.
they already put 20 point something $billion for gas show project that now I saw a report, and Vince, this is
Yeah.
important here, and I think you can chip in on this one. 20.2 billion, I think, dollars from the budget to the gas shore project that the person in charge, and I think it's Brassington, state that it is not feasible. But he's now clinging on the Amulus File Hydro project. So something is playing out there.
Mm-hmm.
We have
Well,
to really
this week, Kitro News also on that gas station, and we're going to get David Patterson to come back and talk about it. But
mm,
Kitro News has been doing a good job in identifying what the costs are for, when it comes to, these kinds of projects, how much it would cost to produce the 1 megawatt of power. And when it's costing us, in some cases they said we're paying like 6 times what the normal rate would be. Vince, any comments you want to make?
Yeah,
I
and of
know,
course,
guys, we're winding up.
yeah, and David, of course, is the export, but what based on the information that I'm privy to, one of the points that David is making up to recently is, and David did a lot of studies on this thing. So
Yeah.
all the studies, he did a lot of studies. What David is saying, well, first of all, Bassington and them are realizing now that the grandiose plan that they had for usage of the gas is only 50 million cubic feet of gas that is going to be coming. So they're not got all these different fertilizer plants and all this kind of stuff. That's not going to satisfy the quantity. So you're building this huge pipeline that is going to, now I'm hearing, is going to be running like $1.34 billion. This is US, by the way.
Yeah.
So you're going to build this, and then of course when you build a pipeline, the other thing, there's a hell of a lot of environmental risk in the ocean because gas is very toxic to fish to start with, and you're going to get leaks in the bottom of the ocean, or how are they going to monitor that, etc. So it's a high risk. But so I think that's what David is coming. Well, rather than building a pipeline, the technology is there right now where you can just pump the gas in ships and
The
bring
ships.
it to shore without
Yep.
this big
Mm-hmm.
pipeline, and for a much cheaper cost you can
Mhm.
transport it by vessel
Yep.
to
Very true.
to, to the shores.
Mm-hmm.
That's an excellent point, Vince. You know, and there are so many persons, there are so many countries who explore oil and gas before us that you can learn from. The government keep making this excuse, Kathy, that we now started, but you are in a better position to learn from all that happened around the world. You don't have to go and reinvent the wheel.
Yep. Yep.
There's no
Yeah,
And
reinventing
but
the
that's the
wheel.
beauty of
Ricky,
technology.
that doesn't fly anymore, because here I was, I brought almost, my intention was to brought all my experience, international experience to Guyana, running the EPA, turn the EPA in from it like changed like day to night, from night to day, and they just abandoned everything else. The insurance, the everything that I did. So that doesn't fly anymore with them saying, "Well, okay, we're just starting." Heck no. Here you had a plan, and I'm just using EP as an example. You had a plan that is internationally, it was an international plan, based on international processes, etc., and you just decided to abandon it.
Mhm.
Yep. You see, the point
Very
here
sad.
also, the additional point here also, which I want the Barbician and all those who are watching across Guyana to understand that we have already close to 3 years this government in office, and they have not bring any new project, no new project to the on the table. Every single thing they're working on is what the AP and UAFC had proposed. Every single project that they got right now. And Kathy, you can
Yeah.
attest to this because
The
you are a
bridge
cabinet,
over the Damrai River, the gas
everything
to
of that.
shore, yep,
In fact, I was
the
challenged
road.
by some friends came in from the US about a couple hours before I come onto the program. That you know
Mhm.
what they asked me the question, what are the new projects you guys doing other than when you guys were in office? And I said, and I was like trying to think in my brain to find out which are the new projects that they got, and the guy said, well, there's none. You understand? So that is good for us because our projects have been running, the AP and EFC projects have been running, and they just remodel, and I know what they do it, and like when they did the
Mhm.
David Gas Ashore, sorry, the local
Yep.
content thing,
Spend more,
yeah,
remodel it, and make it cost more. Well,
wonderful
gentlemen, we
advice.
are close to the end this evening. I know we skipped through quite a few different topics, but I want to give you each a minute to wrap up on, to have some closing remarks, so to speak. So, Vince, any
Yes.
special thoughts,
Oh, absolutely,
concerns?
Kathy. And I'm just gonna, kind of reiterate some very, very key things that happen here. First of all, it's very troubling the way that the government continues to operate in terms of exclusion,
Mm-hmm,
excluding people of
mm-hmm,
one, whatever it is. And there are examples, the Mashramani issue that they did not
mm-hmm,
even invite a member of parliament, the oil and gas conference. They
mm-hmm.
did not invite folk from the opposition. The firing of government employees as soon as they got into office, as long as you don't belong to their, to as a people, to their political entity, you're gone. And of course, the famous minister in parliament that use abusive language against women. Again, it shows that this is not a party who care to include women in their midst. Um, and then, as far as the insurance is concerned, Kathy, I think this is important that we need to follow up on
Mm-hmm.
this. That the especially the vice president, because I think this is under his portfolio, need to answer the question: why did they abandon the what we almost had in place that Exxon had agreed to, was to have
Yeah.
insurance in place, full coverage insurance. Exxon agreed to that. It's in writing, so he
Mm-hmm.
cannot dispute it. And did he allow Exxon to withdraw the 2.5 billion that was already secured? At least we had 2.5 billion US dollars secured. So I think so. That's what I would like to leave the audience with here tonight.
And those are the questions that we must ask.
Hmm.
Ricky, any closing remarks?
Thank you, Kathy, and a pleasure being with you and Vince on this program. Um, Look, it's the the sugar workers need to understand, and the entire country need to understand that the they were being lied to by the PPC government in terms of the sugar industry and to try to reopen them back. You guys need to understand that, and it's not the right thing to do. So, um, also, you have learned that the they remove the restriction for the curfew in terms of the COVID-19. I want to tell you that the COVID-19 is still in existence. You have to take care and to take precautions, protect your family and your loved ones. Still continue to stay safe. And that's all I want to say now, Kathy, and wish everyone a good night.
Before we go to, I want to say I am vaccinated. I took my booster also. So if you're not, we urge you to get your vaccine because that's the one way we're going to all protect ourselves. I talked about the good things happening. We talked about some of the challenges. We've had a lot of accidents in the last 2 weeks, some of them in the region 5 and 6 area. And I want everyone, all the residents, to know that when we come out to visit you guys, we want to make sure everybody's there. So we implore that let's be safe, not only with COVID and our protections, but let's be safe on our roads. You don't have to drive fast and not get there at all. Take your time. Take your time. With that, we want to thank you ever so much for joining us this Saturday evening. Thank you very much, Member Parliament Ricky Ramsuru. And then, of course, thank you very much, Dr. Vince Adams, all the way in the USA. Stay safe, everybody. I'm Kathy Hughes. Thanks for joining us and take care. And thank you
Bye.
to DTV Channel 8.
Thank you all. Thank you,
Thank you,
Kathy,
thank you.
Ricky, and all the folks looking.
Take care.
Great. Thanks.